Okay, I thought I'd do this video on my Toro Groundsmaster 328D, walk around and some more details for any of you who are interested in more specifics about it. I have other videos of it actually blowing snow, which are on my channel, but this one is more of a technical walk around so you can learn a little more about it. So I had many different plows, snow blowers, etc. I've been in etc. I've been in New England for my whole life, and I've wrestled with snow for most of it. You know, making $10 to shoveling driveways when I was a kid and so on. But after all that, I'm getting older and I'm tired of getting in the snow and getting covered with snow and being miserable. So I wanted to find the ultimate way to deal with the snow if I'm staying in New England, and I think I have found it. Well, let me show you this thing. Okay, so we've got the Toro Groundsmaster, which is basically a zero-turn machine. The rear wheels turn. Can pretty much turn around in one spot. It's basically mostly used as a lawnmower, okay, and usually does not have a cab. That's the cozy cab. This is an accessory, and it's a great accessory. This one has the snowblower attachment. This particular brand is, I guess it's Acra. It's heavy duty, commercial grade. I'll show you more about that later. It mounts as the mower deck would, and it lifts up and down just like the mower deck would. I believe usually there's a 6-foot mower deck on these. When I purchased this, he had the mower deck, but I'm all set with mowing lawns. And I wouldn't want to have to take this cozy cab off every year. It probably weighs like 800 pounds or something. It's heavy duty too. You can see how thick the steel is. It's got this one-piece roof. It's got these hooks that you can spin up to lift it on each side. It has heat, and the way they do the heat is there is a heater core in the roof. It's a dropped ceiling, and the heater core is up there, and that's the intake. So it takes air, and there's an air filter, because I guess they figure you could be mowing lawns and maybe you just run the fan and it keeps the dust away from you. But it's got a full air filter behind that cover, and that's where the air comes in, and then it goes over a heater core, which is basically in the ceiling. That's a dropped ceiling, and comes out those vents, which I'll show you more of later. So it's got great heat. It takes hot water from the engine. Actually, there's the hoses right there that eventually go up. It's a kit that comes with a cozy cab, and you have to do that plumbing. Put some T's in the radiator lines and so on. So this particular one is all-wheel drive. Okay, which means it has a rear axle, a heavier rear axle with a differential. Okay, now it's not always all-wheel drive. There is a clutch mechanism in there before the pinion shaft, and if the front wheels are turning faster than the rear wheels. Now they're a different diameter, but that's all calculated. But basically, if the front wheels are spinning, okay, faster than their normal speed, it engages that clutch, and then you get all-wheel drive. So if the front wheels slip, the rears will engage. And I'm not sure if it works in reverse, but I would assume it does the same thing in reverse. But I've had zero problem in the snow with this. But I think the all-wheel drive, is it necessary? I don't know, because I haven't had one without, but I wanted one with. It also makes the ass end heavier, which is good to counteract the weight of quite a heavy snowplow. Traction-wise, these are not the turf tires. These are basically ATV tires. I'll get a close-up on the sides here, if you can see that. I searched for something that would fit the Toro rims. Okay, they're not load rated for this weight, but I've had absolutely no trouble with them. Okay. That's the size of the fronts. They're great. I have zero problems. About 3 years I've had them on here. And excellent, excellent traction. The turf tires are not any good in comparison, in my opinion. Okay, let me show you the engine. So this has a Kubota diesel, which honestly, all I know about that is it never gives me any trouble. Since I've had this for 3 years, it starts in any weather, runs great. I change the oil and do maintenance. I put diesel conditioner in the tank. It holds, I think, 5 gallons. A snowstorm, you can't even see the fuel gauge move. I mean, you know, in an hour, it uses basically no fuel. I have that 5 gallons last all season. Now, I only do my driveway out there, which is a pretty large driveway. I'm not running this thing all night long, all day long, usually an hour or two every storm, and probably 10 storms a year, 5 to 10. Okay, so it's got the diesel, and this cool feature that this whole thing lifts up. This might get a little shaky, but you undo this. Okay, I put these rubber hoses on these corners so it doesn't vibrate so much against the frame. All right, then you have a hood prop. Okay, basically go like that, and then the hood rests on it, which is kind of cool. And then there's your Kubota diesel. Looks like a 3-cylinder. I am a mechanic, but I know nothing about this, as I say, because I haven't had to know anything about it, which is a beautiful thing. Got a nice air filter. It's kind of like turned the wrong way, so it has this funky, normally the radiator would be on this end, so it has this funky offset shaft belt arrangement to drive the fan, which is up against the cab. So that's a little, probably not your typical installation for this engine. That's the engine label, if that's helpful. But it's awesome. It's got just the right amount of power for this thing. The diesel has great torque for the snowblower. No complaints. And here you can turn off that heat with this ball valve in the summer. If you were in it in the summer, which I never am. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the way this thing drives. So there's a big belt right there, and when you throw in the PTO, you're basically tightening this belt. It's a double V Siamese double V belt. When I got this, it was shaking when you put the PTO in. So when you throw the PTO in, it basically tightens this belt, which rotates that shaft. That shaft is on 2 large bearings, and they have these very strange sort of eccentric locking device on the inner race, which I've never seen before. But those basically had become loose, and it wore this groove in the PTO shaft. I don't know if we can get a shot of this or not. I've been under this thing a lot. There we go. Okay, so there's that main pulley, driven by the engine crankshaft pulley, okay, which is also going to a drive shaft. It's hydrostatic drive, so there is really not a gearbox. It's a hydraulic, basically, gearbox right there. That's your driving your rear, and then the front is that that gearbox. So it's not conventional that there's a transmission. Basically, the engine turns a hydraulic pump, which is right here, and there's a filter. And then your pedal decides which way this thing is gonna go, forward or reverse. Oh, unlimited different speeds, you know, to like 20 miles an hour. And reverse is just tilt the pedal backwards. Really great for snow blowing because you can just pick your speed and match it to the engine load and just go. Excellent. So this shaft, okay, rides on 2 bearings. This shaft here is your main PTO shaft, which runs either your snowblower or your lawnmower. And there's 2 big bearings on either end in sort of a block. And those were shot. So the PTO shaft was basically rattling all over the place. I had to rebuild the PTO shaft and put new bearings in. I don't know if that's a typical problem. We'll look at the hours when we look in the cab, but I did have that problem. But there was no other issues with it being worn out. Just that one thing, which had to be fixed. But once I fixed it, pretty much the rest of it was fine. So there's your PTO shaft that drives whichever implement you're using. Could be a broom, could be a lawnmower. In this case, it's a snowblower. That basically is on a spline that slides apart. There's your hydraulic lift ram, which is part of the Groundsmaster. And it basically lifts this arm. So you can modify it to lift all kinds of different things, and that's basically the PTO to drive it. And then you have these 2 stabilizing arms, one on each side, that basically keep the thing straight ahead and push it. The snow blower, I modified it with a automatic chute angle. That's an electric ram. It's not hydraulic, it has an electric motor, 12 volt, which extends this rod, a ram. And I did a little bit of fabricating here. These were already here, I believe, and I fabricated these ends to make it work with this existing bracketry. It was originally a manual way to adjust the tilt of the chute. And I did not want to get out of this thing at all. I want to sit inside the whole snowstorm, so laziness prevailed, but I'm very happy about that. And then the rotation of the chute is basically a 1,000 pound super winch. Okay. That's basically factory for this particular snowblower. And basically you just go forward and reverse with a switch in there normally. And they hooked up a metal cable, wrapped it a few times around the drum, and basically it's a continuous loop, and there's a couple of knots on there, and that's what rotates the drum. And it's got some of this nylon plasticky stuff in here, so it kind of spins on that. It's kind of noisy, but it works. And I didn't do anything except I did take it apart and lube it, but it was fine. So I put in Dyneema winch line because the steel was kind of getting splintery and so on, and I figured this stuff will never corrode. Plus it matches. About any snowblower is these shoes are very important. The snowblower should be riding on the shoes. There's one on each side. It should not be riding on the bucket because you just end up wearing down the bucket. And as the bucket wears down, the auger edges hit the ground. If you see a neglected snowblower, you'll see the augers are all worn down the sides of the bucket because those are supposed to be near the ground. So I have mine set, my shoes, you always want to set this off the ground a little bit. I have it set about 1.25 inches, which is excessive, but I have a gravel driveway out there and I'd rather not be flinging gravel through the machine. It definitely bangs up the chute and the impeller housing. So best not to be shooting rocks and gravel. It'll shoot them, but it makes a lot of racket. It's not a great thing to be doing continuously. So you can set that 1/4 inch off of a level surface. But if you're gonna scrape, you think you're gonna scrape with that, you're just gonna wear down the cutting edge and you're eventually gonna wear down the sides of the box too. But most people never adjust them and they just wear the whole snowblower assembly away. So very good idea to keep these shoes adjusted so you're not wearing out your box. I actually put on a PTFE plastic, this is a different version of that industrial slick plastic, and I sort of experimenting with that. These carriage bolts in here. It seems to be doing pretty well. That's 3 years. They started off 3/4 of an inch thick and they're about a half now, so I suppose it's not too bad. Okay. This particular snowblower has an oiler because there's a chain in this housing that drives the two-stage snowblower. You drive the augers are driven at a different rate than the impeller. So the reason is the PTO is at a certain speed and the snowblower needs to be a higher or lower speed. I'm not sure which. So there's basically a chain gear reduction in there. And this oiler drips oil down that copper pipe and it drips it right on the chain in there. So you basically lift this Luckenheimer oiler and then it starts to oil while you're working, a little drip at a time. There's like a sight glass in there. And you gotta make sure you close it because otherwise all the oil will drain out while it's sitting. One of the modifications I did to the snowblower was the addition of this slick, this is an industrial low friction plastic. It's like a nylon TFE plastic designed for conveyor belts and so on, so things slip better. So I basically cut a piece for the two parts of the chute to aid in snow flying out of there. And then I also put it on the impeller blades. So you'll see I basically cut a piece, it's 1/4 inch. I had to cut them to fit. And I use these heavy duty rivets, which have lasted for 3 years. So basically each of the impeller blades has this slick surface on it, because the snow basically gets flung to the outside as it spins off the impeller and flies out the chute. Also prevents some of the caking and so on of wet snow. I would consider that an improvement. And you can make it nice and tight too, although as it wears, you end up with a little bit of a space in here, just from stones and things like that, but it's never gonna be perfectly tight. The auger is pretty straightforward. It's got a nice cast iron gearbox. Here's your shear pins, which are basically just bolts. Super easy to get to. That's it. It's just going through a flat plate. So you may have to spin it around to get it located, get your wrenches in there, but I keep that stuff in the cab. You go through shear pins, you're supposed to. You hit the garden hose, or the shear pins are easy to change and they're very effective. Okay, so there's the cab. Cozy Cab is a kit made by a different company and it bolts onto the Groundsmaster. And there's information of those online, various different places. I put these work lights in, the LED work lights. I put the flasher up there. My buddy gave it to me. And I've got work lights on the back. All right, and we put this hood down. Okay. So there's the work lights in the back. I put a lot of conspicuity tape on it because, you know, you're driving out in the street and it's nighttime and it's nice to be seen. These are 2 tail weights. There's up to 6, I think you can put on these. I have 2 others. The 2 just about balances the snow blower when it's lifted. Because when you lift a snow blower, that's, you know, several hundred pounds hanging off the front. It tends to pivot like this and do a wheelie, especially when you're backing up. But when the snow blower is down, that's not an issue. So it's just really backing up or braking. I think 2 is fine, but probably could do 4 and it would work well too. I put this loading dock bumper on them because it's really hard to see back there when you're backing up, and it sticks out a lot farther than you think. So this is sort of an insurance policy. Okay, nice heavy duty axles, all greasable. This is definitely a commercial piece of equipment. There's your power steering ram. You can see how heavy the chassis is. That's at least 1/4 inch plate. It looks like it could be 5/16. This one was not rusty and kept inside most of its life. It's in really good shape. Okay, so Cozy Cab has a door latch. Okay. There's the door, it's all quality made. This again, commercial. Okay, here's the inside. I put this is rubber gym floor rubber, which is pretty cheap and you can get in small quantities. Actually, we did a gym for somebody and I had it left over. And it just happened to have red specks in it. That's a great, I basically cut that for the floor to line that. Your controls, you have a brake for left and right. You can brake the left front wheel or the right front wheel. There's no rear brakes, just these wheels that are the main drive wheels. So you can, I guess that would help you turn more rapidly. If you brake the left side, it will swing around to the left. I never use the brakes. And then there's an emergency brake. If you push this, basically this pin holds it in a braked position, and then you pop that out and it pops back. I think you gotta push it a little harder. I don't use the brakes. This thing, it's hydrostatic drive. So what that means is this pedal, just like the arrows say, it's a rocker pedal. That makes it go forward. This makes it go backwards. That's it. When it's in the middle, it's not moving. It's hydrostatic. So if you're going forward and you back off on the speed, it hydraulically slows down to that new speed. I don't know, brakes are really not necessary, I guess, unless something goes horribly wrong. But that's your drive pedal. There's no shifting, there's no speed range. You push that toe to go and heel to go in reverse. And it goes right along when you rev up the engine. It goes definitely 20, faster than you're ever gonna snow blow. Okay, we've got power steering, suicide knob, if you will, which is good for, you know, maneuvering around. Usually it's too fast steering if you're trying to get close to something. I'll put both hands on the wheel because you don't have to steer much if you're just trying to go close to something. This is something I totally added, okay? So this is my chute control. I made this. I got a low voltage joystick, okay, electronics joystick on eBay. And then inside of this, wrapped with inner tube rubber, there are relays, okay? So the thing is with a joystick, they're not designed to, you know, work with 2 or 3 or 4 amps. They're used to work with milliamps. So when this joystick completes its circuit, let's say to the left, it basically trips a relay that connects the 3 or 4 amps to the chute motor, because that thing there is probably using at least 3 or 4 amps, maybe 10. And you need a relay that can handle that. So there's several relays in here. I think there's actually 4 relays in here. Let me take this apart and show you. I got Velcro. I have just a rubber inner tube around this. So there's your relays. You have a relay for each direction. Up, down, left, right. And it's not as complicated as you think. It's nice if you can make it. So there's the relays, and I made this whole arrangement and painted it all red. So that controls the chute. I'll show you how that works. So you've got up and down, left and right. Up and down is for the tilt, the angle. Up. Down. And right. And left. It works great. It's been very reliable. As long as you're not overloading your relays or your joystick and making too many basically watts go through it, or amps, then it will be reliable. And like I said, that thing's kind of noisy, but it's been noisy ever since I hooked it up, and I'm not sure if there's anything wrong with it, but it works fine, so, and easily replaceable. Okay, so now we have the controls. So we have this cozy cab, which basically, you can see the edge of it, goes up and over. But basically this is in a Toro Groundsmaster, all this stuff, the dashboard and the controls. Okay, so we have the dash, and this has 2,312 hours, which is, you know, half its life-ish, like 70,000 miles on a car, I would say. Not too bad. And I think it's in very good condition for those hours. There's the fuel. So that's from 2 storms. It was full, and that's what? A 5-gallon tank, so that's like 1.5 gallons. All right, it has a glow plug, which just went out. Diesel engine, electric start. Starts like that all the time. When it's cold, it takes a few more turns when it's outside. So that's pretty straightforward. Here's your throttle, engine speed. So you want to have that cranked when you're snow blowing, always with a snow blower, because the RPM of the snow blower, the impeller, basically that fast spinning impeller is what throws the snow out of the chute. And if you bog it down and don't have a good RPM, it's not going to throw the snow. The higher the RPM, the more energy it's imparting into the snow, and the more snow it throws. So all about, you want to definitely maximize your RPM when you're snow blowing. And a good tip for knowing how fast to go, because the hydrostatic drive, you can go whatever speed you want by just pushing a little more on the pedal. You want to go as fast as the engine can handle the snow. So if it's deep, heavy, wet snow, you'll start to give it more speed, and the diesel will start dropping off its high RPM, and it'll get out of its power band. And that's just not going to be helpful. You want to keep it in the power band. So you want to go as fast as the engine can handle, and is safe, obviously. But light powder, you can go a lot faster road speed than you can in deep wet stuff. But that's what's great about the hydrostatic drive. You don't have to pick a speed and be in the wrong speed with the RPM maxed out. You can max out the RPM and go any speed you want, which is hydrostatic drive is great for low speed vehicles. Okay, then we have the PTO lever. Pushing this down basically tightens that Siamese double V belt I showed you earlier, which engages the PTO shaft and drives the snow blower. Get this cool window, you can see kind of like what you just snow blowed. There's the edge of the snow blower. Release that, disengages the PTO and stops the implement from spinning. You have the implement lift. I extended this because it's normally short and you have to reach over to grab it, and I wanted to sit in a comfortable position. So I extended this with a double nut, barrel nut. So you have raise the implement. Okay, that will hold it. We let it go, it holds it at that height. This lowers the implement, and then it bounces back to basically locked at whatever height. And then float, you catch it in this notch, and it basically is resting on the ground. Whatever the ground does, it follows the ground, which is normally how you operate a lawnmower or a snowblower or a broom. There's not many things, except maybe a grater blade, that you want to maintain a certain height. Okay, the battery is actually in here. That's again part of the Groundsmaster. All these controls are. Okay, there is a compartment. Let me show you the seat tilting. So this is the seat. Window opens. Okay, that window opens on this side too. Okay, which I don't usually do in the winter. Okay, and then the whole seat tilts like this. There's a seat belt. Okay, there's a prop to hold the seat up because the fuel tank is under there. Battery again over there in the controls. So all this stuff's on a Groundsmaster anyway. And here's a little toolbox in here. And I've got American flag, and I've got a, you never know when you might need that. And this is a shear pin kit. So I put this together with a little tackle box. I got a bunch of shear pins, basically bolts, grade 8 bolts with nuts. That's what was in it. That seems to work. They do shear occasionally, so you know they're right. Couple of wrenches. Got plenty of them. Usually go through one a storm. I'll hit like a piece of wood or something under the snow. Garden hose. Oh, I wanted to show you the heat. So here's what we have on the roof. That's where that heater core is. There's the adjustable outlets. You can rotate them and flap the flaps. I usually keep them angled at the windshield because that's where you tend to get condensation. And here's your sort of control panel up in the ceiling. There's a light over here, a little doobie light. And this basically opens up your heat valve, gives you warm, and is maybe shut off or cooler. Then we have the blower speed. And we have the flashers on the roof. All right, and we have the work lights. Front and back, those are excellent at night. LED, I put those on. And then we have the wiper, which you definitely need. You know how the snow can start flying when it's windy and you're blowing powder. It definitely gets all over the outside, none on the inside. I'll report to that. And here is a curvy mirror I put in for a little better visibility. Visibility isn't fantastic in here. Get a lot of blockage, and it's very hard to see the rear wheels. You can bend back and you really can't even, there's the rear wheel, but you really can't see it. You can't see that tail bumper either. So you just have to be careful like anything. But I put these mirrors on as well. These aren't on the Cozy Cab, but I put them on. Pretty inexpensive Amazon type thing. And we have a suspension seat as well that is adjustable, which is cool. Very comfortable in this thing. Okay, door gets held open with a gas shock, which is cool. I'm generally very happy with this machine. It's heavy duty enough. I'm using it, you know, as a homeowner. I am a contractor. I may get a trailer and drive around with this thing to job sites. I haven't done it yet. I'm sure it could handle that. It's gonna last me forever doing my driveway. And I have finally found a solution to to the misery of winter in New England, which does get old eventually. Oh, look at this poor guy. He looks over and sees me in my cozy cab. Tragic. Trust me. I've sat in plow trucks for many 24 hours. This is a beautiful thing. I'll get you a nice overview of it. We're actually waiting for a storm here. I'm going to be videotaping that one. We're expecting 8 to 10. And there she is. It's about 7'4" to the top of that light. It's decently high, higher than you'd think. It's about, you know, nominally 5 feet wide, you know, 4.5 feet. I think that that bucket is over 4 feet. I think it's 50 inches. So it's, you know, basically less than 5 feet wide, and it's 11 foot 5 or 6 from the tail, those counterweights, to the front of that snowblower. So you basically need a 6 by 12 footprint, and about, you know, 8 feet will give you some clearance of height. Well, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments and I'll answer them. I looked around a lot for just the right thing, and I'm very happy with this for my purposes. Thanks for watching.